Before we begin, a quick warning. Tennessee True Crime contains detailed descriptions and images of real-life violence. Some listeners and viewers may find the material deeply disturbing. This content is intended for mature audiences only. And remember, the goal of sharing these stories is not to sensationalize tragedy, but to honor the victims, understand the truth, and give voice to those who can no longer speak for themselves. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Let me start with something real simple. I think everyone has something that makes them want to smack somebody sometimes. Speaking for myself, it's easy for people to get under my skin. I have a very small tolerance for a lot of things. Ignorance, people who smack their food or chew with their mouth open, listening to folks crunch ice, racism, mistreating my kids, biological or not, disrespecting my sisters and brother. Oh no, baby. I can do that, but you can't. And don't even look at my husband. You get the gist. But how far would you go? Throwing hands? Maybe. But have you ever just felt mean one day and decided to actually kill someone? Yeah, me either. Just when some of y'all thought I was crazy, honey, hold on tight for this ride. And buckle up, Buttercup, because this one is messy. They say the South never forgets. And Tennessee, she remembers everything. Welcome to Tennessee True Crime, where the shadows of the volunteer state's past meet the stories that refuse to be forgotten. I'm your host, Tiffany Morgan. Each week, we dig into twisted tales of betrayal, violence, and mystery. The ones where whispers carry truth, and the answers are never as simple as they seem. Let's step into the dark and piece together the clues. Because in Tennessee, some secrets still haunt the hills. This is Tennessee True Crime.
Down through the smoky hollers where the cold wind sighs, footsteps fall where the moonlight hides, whispers over rivers, a secret lost in time. Welcome to Tennessee True Crime.
Hey friends, I want to take y'all back to 1995, Knoxville, Tennessee, the Job Corps Center. Now, Job Corps was this free training and education program for young people who just needed a chance. It was a wonderful resource that provided hands-on classes and stability, no student debt, and for a lot of these kids, it was a new start. That's where we're going to meet a circle of students, and these are names you'll hear a lot. Colleen Slimmer, Krista Pike, Tadaryl Shipp, Shadola Peterson, and classmates like Kim Elo and Stephanie Wilson. They were sweet kids, but some of them were messy kids, people trying to find their place. Now, tonight we're talking about how small things, a wave in the hallway, a rumor, a fight, turned into one of the most brutal and heart-wrenching cases this state has ever seen. This is the story of Colleen Slimmer. Now, Colleen came from Florida. She had been raised in a very loving environment with her mom and her stepdad. She wanted to go to college, but finances said no. So she joined Job Corps to study computers. She was an active girl. She loved to run marathons, roller skate. She loved kids. She enjoyed feeding handicapped and underprivileged children. Now, her mama, May, ran a daycare for about 40 years. So you can tell where Colleen got that love for kids. She was the kind of person that folks liked. She was very friendly, very normal, and not at all looking for trouble. And then there's the other side of this circle. Daryl Shipp had been born in Compton, lived in Mississippi for a little while, then Memphis, then went to Knoxville to the Job Corps. Daryl was the popular, cool guy. Folks said he wasn't a bad kid, just someone whose anger could come on strong. He'd gotten into a few fights, but overall, a very likable guy. He had come to the Job Corps to pursue a career in culinary arts. He dreamed of being a famous chef one day. Krista Pike, now that's a long, complicated story. She'd had a rough life, moved around a lot. She was torn between her mom and her dad, who lived in 2 separate states. She moved schools about a dozen times. There was also a history of physical and sexual abuse. Unsaid things that leave a real mess inside of a person. She'd been sexually assaulted multiple times, tried to take her life a couple times, and lost her one stabilizing person, which was her grandma. That was the only source of normal love and affection that Krista had experienced. At one point, she was removed from her mother's home by child services, but as it goes, she was placed back in months later, and things never really seemed to improve. But Krista was smart. She was very smart. She scored a 111 on an administered IQ test. She came to the Job Corps to train as a nurse, just like her mom, the same mom who had drank too much and allowed for such a volatile childhood. Now, Krista and Colleen had actually come into the program together and gone through orientation with each other. And according to faculty there, this is oftentimes when you form your bonds with your classmates. Krista quickly became the head of the social circle and seemed to really control the ebb and flow of the friend group. Now, Shadola Peterson, she had become fast friends with Krista and hung out with her in her free time. She came to the Job Corps to also pursue a career in culinary arts. Faculty there reported her to be a follower, saying that she really badly wanted to fit in with her peers and the popular crowd, and she was happy to be a part of that crowd, even if Krista controlled it. Now, Krista and Daryl, they quickly sparked a romance. Students called the pair Doom and Gloom. People thought that they were a very odd pair because Krista was Miss Popular, and to Daryl, it seems, well, he was a Satanist. Rather than this turning Krista away from him, she leaned in. She embraced it, and she was serious about her man. They often stayed up late in his room, worshiping the devil, chanting, at a shrine that Daryl had set up. And he loved Krista, or as he liked to call her, his little devil. Now, one day in the Job Corps hallway, friendly Colleen made the mistake of just simply waving at Daryl, just being polite. Krista saw it and she got hot. She told Colleen right then and there, "Stay away from my man." And Colleen, she was happy to oblige. She just wanted to be nice. She wasn't after Daryl. She didn't want drama. And she told Krista as much. But Krista could not let it go. She started bullying Colleen, calling her names, intimidating her, and things eventually escalated. Someone, whether at Krista's direction or because of her influence, trashed Colleen's room. They had stolen stuff, absolutely wrecked it. And that was just a step too far. So Colleen goes and tells Krista, "Listen, I don't even like guys like Daryl." Now, what she meant, we don't know, but Krista chose to tell everybody it was because Daryl was black, not that he was an open devil worshiper. Now, Krista had not really been an ideal student while she was there at the Job Corps. And Colleen, well, she knew that Krista was on thin ice. Krista had multiple infractions for missing class, stirring up trouble, being into Daryl's room past curfew, so Colleen went to the board. Now, the board met, and they decided Krista only had one more strike. Now, people later said that should have been it. Krista should have been sent home right then because they had already told her that very same thing. But the board kept her at the Job Corps school. Colleen stayed there, and Krista stayed there, right in that same environment.
One.
Well, Christmas was right around the corner, and they all went home for break. So when they came back, for a minute, it seemed like maybe things had cooled off a little bit. Colleen thought maybe we've buried the hatchet, and she was extremely happy about this because it was causing her a lot of trouble, frankly. She thought maybe I can keep my head down and I can finish the program. But sometimes you can't run hard enough from the kind of person who is dead set on making trouble. Now, after they came back from break, on January 12th, 1995, Krista asked Colleen to go to the Blockbuster store to pick a movie. Now, for all you young kids, this was before the time of Netflix and streaming where we actually had to go to a physical store and pick out a movie and then put it in a device called a VCR or a DVD player to watch it. Anyway, Daryl and Shadola asked if they could tag along with Krista and Colleen to the Blockbuster that night. Colleen was, again, happy about this, thought this was another sign of things improving. Maybe they could all just get along and finally let things go. I mean, I'm sure she thought Krista had time to think about how she'd been acting, and maybe the break allowed her to cool off. They signed out from the school like you had to do, 4 names on the sheet, and they walked off together. Now, the next day, on Friday the 13th, a grounds worker at the University of Tennessee was walking near the greenhouses on UT's agricultural campus. He saw what he thought was blood on the walkway. He followed it and found what he thought to be a mutilated animal. But then he realized it was not an animal at all. It was a young woman, nude from the waist up. Now, police were called and they came. And of course, what they found was absolutely horrific. Officer John Terry Johnson later said he thought he was looking at the victim's face, but he couldn't really tell. That's how mutilated it was. They taped off the scene, which was about 250 feet in radius, and they bagged evidence, which included a bloody chunk of asphalt, and took the body to the morgue. There was blood, there was violence, there was terror. No one knew what could have happened. This was Colleen, but investigators did not know who she was yet. Now, Randy York, a criminal investigator with the Knoxville Police Department, began investigating this case on that Friday the 13th, the very day that Colleen's body was discovered. And this is where the threads start to come together. According to the State versus Pike factual background, and I'm going to be blunt here, this next part gets graphic. Dr. Sandra Elkins, who was the Knox County medical examiner, performed the autopsy on Colleen's body. She had attempted to catalog the slash and stab wounds on her body and on her torso by assigning a letter of the alphabet to each one. But there were so many wounds that eventually Dr. Elkins decided to catalog only the most serious and major wounds. Dr. Elkins explained that to catalog every wound, she would have been required to go through the alphabet again and possibly stay in the morgue for 3 days. Now, eventually, Dr. Elkins said she basically just threw up her hands and wrote down innumerable superficial slash wounds on the back, arms, and chest. Now, in addition, she said the victim had purple bruises on her knees, indicating fresh bruising consistent with crawling, and defensive wounds on her right arm. Dr. Elkins described the major slash and stab wounds she had cataloged on the victim's back, arms, abdomen, and chest. She found a 6-inch gaping wound across the middle of the victim's neck, which had penetrated the fat and muscles of the neck. She had also found 10 other slash wounds on the victim's throat. There were more slash wounds on the victim's face. Now, because the area around each wound was red in appearance, Dr. Elkins was able to conclude that the victim's heart had been beating when all of these wounds were inflicted, and that Colleen would not have been rendered unconscious by any of the stab or slash wounds. Dr. Elkins determined that the victim's death was caused by blunt force injuries to the head. Colleen had suffered multiple and extensive skull fractures. From that autopsy, Dr. Elkins determined that the victim had sustained a minimum of 4 blows to her head, 2 to the left side, 1 over the right eye, and 1 in the nose area. The right front area of Colleen's skull had been fractured, as had the bridge of her nose. However, the major wound, which she labeled as Injury W, involved most of the left side of the victim's head. Dr. Elkins said that this injury, caused by blunt force to the left side, while the right side of the victim's head was against a firm surface, and this had also fractured the right side of the skull and embedded a portion of the skull into the victim's brain. She found small divots in Colleen's skull containing black particles from an asphalt chunk, which was later determined to have been the murder weapon. Finally, Dr. Elkins testified that the blood in the victim's sinus cavity further indicated that Colleen had been alive and probably conscious when all of these injuries were inflicted. And on her chest, they found something very disturbing. After they cleaned her body off, they found that a pentagram had been carved into her chest. This wasn't a fight that got out of hand. This was torture. Now, what's worse, and so sad for the mom, Dr. Elkins had to remove Colleen's head in order to send the skull to Dr. Murray Marks, who was a forensic anthropologist at the University of Tennessee. Now, Dr. Marks reconstructed the skull, fitting loose pieces together, but it couldn't be reconstructed fully. He tried, but a piece was missing. Now, news of this gruesome crime spread. A mother in Jackson, Tennessee, called to check on her daughter after the holidays. She said her daughter had come home and voiced to her mom that she was very afraid of some of the students at the Job Corps because they were Satanists. That tip, which was not public knowledge at that time, was absolute gold for investigators. Detectives went to Job Corps to follow that lead. Now, that mother from Jackson was absolutely relieved to know that her daughter was safe. But while they were there, Investigator York asked for the sign-out sheets. When he reviewed it, he found that group of 4 who had gone out the previous night. And those 4 names, he learned, were Krista Pike, Daryl Shipp, Colleen Slimmer, and Shadola Peterson. But as we know, only 3 names were on that sign-in when they came back because, unfortunately, Colleen had never returned. Now, this is when investigators were able to identify her and make that horrible call to her mother, May. Now the story picks up speed and people start talking. And I mean, I don't know how anyone could keep that in, honestly. Would something like that not absolutely eat you alive? Anyway, the investigation ramped up and the questioning began. So Investigator York brought Daryl, Shadola, and Krista in. separately, of course. And what were Krista and Tadaro wearing? Well, matching pentagram necklaces, of course. Now, Tadaro claims that he thought they were bringing Colleen to the woods to scare her. He thought Krista was just going to fight her and have that be that. But he said that things took a dark turn, and he just went with it. And he took full responsibility for his actions in the murder. Now, Tadaro had not only participated in all of it, but when investigators asked who cut something into her chest, Tadaro said, "I did it." When they asked what it was, without hesitation, he said, "A satanic star." So Shadala was, by all accounts, just a witness. And when it came time for her questioning, what a witness she was. She told police what had happened without hesitation. And Krista, when it came time for her to talk, she sang like a canary. Investigator York said that he will never forget talking to Krista, not only because of what she confessed, but that she seemed to be excited when she was telling the story. Krista told Investigator York that she never intended to kill Colleen, just fight her and tell her, "Leave me and my man alone." However, Krista admitted that she'd taken a box cutter and a miniature meat cleaver that she had borrowed from someone there at the Job Corps when they all left the campus. Now, I mean, sure, that's how everyone fist fights, right? With a meat cleaver. So these next details come straight from court records. According to Krista, she asked Colleen to go to Blockbuster. And as they were walking, Krista told Colleen that she had a bag of weed hidden in Tyson Park, which was there on UT's campus. When they got to the steam plant on UT's agricultural campus, Krista and Colleen started exchanging words. And by that, I'm sure Krista instigated it. Now, Krista then began hitting Colleen and banging her head on her knee. She then threw Colleen to the ground and kicked her repeatedly. Now, according to Krista, as she slammed Colleen's head against the concrete, Colleen was repeatedly asking, "Why are you doing this to me?" And when Colleen threatened to report Krista so that she would be terminated from the Job Corps program, Krista again repeatedly kicked her in the face and the side. Colleen lay on the ground and cried for a time and then tried to run away, but Tadaro caught her and pushed her to the ground. Now, Krista and Tadaro held Colleen down until she stopped struggling, and then they dragged her to another area where Krista cut Colleen's stomach with the box cutter, as Colleen screamed and screamed. Now, at this point, Krista said she was just looking at Colleen and just watching her bleed. When Colleen rolled over, stood up, and tried to run away again, Krista cut her back, telling Investigator York, the big long cut. Krista said Colleen repeatedly tried to get up and run again, and she recounted how Colleen begged for her life. She bargained with Krista to talk to her and tell her if she would just let her go. She said, "I'll walk back to my home in Florida. I won't even stop at Job Corps to get my belongings. Just please let me go." And Krista responded, "Shut up, because it's harder to hurt somebody when you're talking to me." She said the more Colleen talked, the more she kicked her in the face. Now, Krista thought she heard a noise at one point, so she went to check it out. And when she returned, she said she began cutting Colleen across the throat. When Colleen continued to talk and still begged for her life, she cut her throat several more times. Krista said that Colleen continued to talk and tried to sit up even though her throat had been slashed. And each time she did, Krista and Tadero would push her back down to the ground. How many opportunities did they have to just let her go? Now, Colleen attempted to run away again, and Krista threw a rock which hit Colleen in the back of the head. And then Tadero, following suit, also hit her with a rock in the head. They continued to hit her with the rock, and eventually Krista said she could hear Colleen breathing blood in and out, and she could see her jerking. But Krista didn't stop and kept hitting her and hitting her and hitting her. Krista said she eventually said to her, "Colleen, do you know who's doing this to you?" She said her only response was groaning noises and that she couldn't understand what she was saying. Then they forced her to take her shirt and bra off because they thought that would prevent her from trying to run away again. And when the movement and noises quieted down, Krista said she and Tadero each grabbed one of Colleen's feet and dragged her to an area near some trees, leaving her body on a pile of dirt and debris. They left Colleen's clothing in the surrounding bushes, and Krista said this whole episode lasted for about 30 minutes to an hour. After disposing of her body, Krista and Tadero washed their hands and shoes in a mud puddle. They got rid of the box cutter and returned the miniature meat cleaver to the person at Job Corps from whom she had borrowed it. She never identified that individual. Would you not have questions if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, can I borrow a miniature meat cleaver, even though I'm studying to be a nurse?" Like, what? So Krista told investigators she'd thrown away 2 forms of Colleen's ID and Colleen's gloves in a Texaco trash can there on Cumberland Avenue. After questioning, Krista gave consent to search her room and then accompanied him to the Job Corps Center. From there, she retraced her steps and eventually directed him to the exact location where the victim's body was found. Now, Kim Iloilo and Stephanie Wilson, who were also students at Job Corps, were able to add some more information to the case, further corroborating what had happened. Kim stated that when Krista got back, she came into her room that night. Kim was not prepared for what came next. Krista just told Kim that she had just killed Colleen. Now, Kim was surely kicking herself at this point because Krista had told her just the day before that she intended on getting rid of Colleen. But Kim thought she was being dramatic, just Krista being Krista, spouting off at the mouth. Because when Kim asked her, "Why do you want to kill Colleen?" she said, "I'm just feeling mean today." Then the part that made the hairs on my neck stand up, what she whipped out of her pocket to show off to Kim. Krista had ripped a piece of Colleen's skull off and brought it back to campus as a souvenir. Now, Krista showed it to Kim and then told her all the grisly details, bragging about how she had begged them to stop. Finally, Krista told her about the pentagram that had been carved onto Colleen's chest. Even more chilling, Kim said that all the while Krista was telling her this, she was dancing in a circle, smiling and singing, la la la, while she related all of these details about the murder. And when Kim saw Krista at breakfast the next morning, she said, "What did you do with that piece of skull?" Krista said, "Of course. It's in my pocket. And yes, I'm eating breakfast with it." What a psycho. I mean, honestly. Now, during class later that morning, Krista made a similar statement to Stephanie Wilson, pointing to brown spots on her shoes and saying, "That ain't mud on my shoes. That's blood." Then she takes out the napkin in class with the piece of skull in it to show it off like an award. Krista bragged to Stephanie that Colleen's blood and brains had been pouring out and that she'd torn the piece of skull off when she left the scene. Now, I understand that Kim and Stephanie must have been terrified, but they never told police about this until after the fact. So Krista's jacket that she'd been carrying around the piece of skull in was turned in by Robert A. Pollock. Now, he was an orientation specialist at the Knoxville Job Corps. He testified that he had spoken with Krista on January 13th, 1995, concerning a misplaced ID card. I mean, I'm sure she did misplace her ID card after all that. Now, after Krista left his office, he noticed a black leather jacket hanging on the chair where she had sat. The jacket had been hanging on the chair when he locked the room at approximately 4 p.m. on January 13th, and it was still there when he returned at 7:30 a.m. on January 17th. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if I knew that I was carrying around a piece of someone's skull and I wasn't ready to be caught, I'm keeping that thing with me at all costs. But thankfully, she left it. Now, because he'd heard over the weekend that Krista was a suspect in this murder investigation, he immediately turned the jacket over. And there, still inside the pocket, was the piece of skull, which would complete the reconstruction in court, fitting in like a perfect missing puzzle piece. Now, this case went to trial, and the testimony, of course, was awful to hear. The judge had trouble holding herself together. She told Krista, publicly in court as she was crying, that in 22 years of sitting as a judge, she had never seen anything as horrible as what she'd seen in this case. She also noted, "Krista, I've never even seen you say that you're sorry." Now, Krista was convicted and sentenced to death. Tadero received life. He was 17 at the time. Shadola got lesser consequences. Since she had just been a lookout and she testified against them, she was charged as an accessory after the fact and received 6 years felony probation. Krista never seemed to show any remorse after the fact either. In fact, she wrote a sweet little love letter to her boyfriend Tadero over a year after this murder happened. And she says, "You see what I get for trying to be nice to the hoe? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more, and they want to fry me? Ain't that some crap?" What? So there are people that support Krista, which I'm sure family members, whatnot, but they argue about her upbringing, her abuse, her trauma, her mental illness, and they raise questions about whether the death penalty is right for her. And I hear that, okay? I get that trauma shapes people, but to argue those things excuse what she did, that's a hard sell for me, and I reckon a hard sell for a lot of the victim's family. That is nothing short of a slap in the face for all those who have faced similar trauma, who are neurodivergent, or who have mental illnesses, or a combination of any of those three. Because I guarantee there are plenty out there who did not go down the road that Krista did. And I guess in 2001, when Krista tried to kill another inmate because she was running her mouth, not even to Krista, to somebody else, but Krista can't stand that. I guess she shouldn't be punished to the fullest extent for that either. Now, she told her mother about this incident over a taped phone call from the jail. These are her words. "I wrapped that shoestring around her neck and tried to choke the life out of her. She was passed out on the ground, Mama, twitching, foaming at the mouth. Her eyeballs were bugged out so far her eyelids were flipped up." Krista then said, "Now I know the difference between premeditated murder and what happened to Colleen because I premeditated the crap out of this. If I'd have had 30 more seconds, we'd have a little chalk outline out there in our rec pen and that witch would be gone somewhere." Like I said, psycho. According to news reports from WBIR.com, Tadero has come up for parole. Now, he agreed he'd used terrible judgment at that time. I mean, he was 17, when he and Krista Pike tortured and murdered Colleen Slimmer. He called himself idiotic and a child for taking part in the killing. And he says, "I've never denied what I did, and I'm not going to start. I was wrong." You think? Well, the parole board denied his release. Tadero says he's been working for years to improve himself through education and program opportunities. And he says he's been married now for more than 5 years. I know that's what every woman is looking for, right? A maybe reformed Satanist who tortured and killed a girl and carved a pentagram into her chest. Oh, if you're that desperate, ladies, my next venture will be to start up a dating service at the Warren County Jail. We'll call it Cell Mates. Krista is set to be executed on September 30th, 2026. She is the only woman that will have been executed in Tennessee in over 200 years. Now, Colleen's mother, Mae Martinez, has been living with this loss ever since. She says she's praying for the day of closure. She still hasn't gotten all of her daughter's remains back. You see, she cannot receive her daughter's skull until the execution has been carried out, if it ever is. Can you imagine sitting in that courtroom, watching them pass around your daughter's head and just have to sit there? And the legal wheels, they keep turning, as we know. Krista has had appeals and motions, and as of the last reports you can find, of course, her execution date was scheduled, but she keeps filing appeals, and the legal processes keep moving, and that's often how it goes with death penalty cases. Time, appeals, stays, repeat. So what do we do with a story like this? I mean, anger is natural. I didn't even know Colleen, and I'm angry for her. I'm angry for her mom. Sadness is normal too. But it raises a heavy question. Just how much does trauma explain? How much does it excuse? When a person is horrifically abused, should that change our punishment? When the system fails victims of abuse, and they do, trust me, I've worked in it, do we owe more intervention earlier? And to the families, what is justice? Is it a death sentence, or is it something else? And should we let the families have more say-so in what that punishment is? Some people want them put to death. Others want them to suffer in jail. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that Colleen was someone's daughter, somebody's dream, and she didn't get to grow up. Her life was taken from her. Now, if this episode stirred something in you, whether it be anger or sorrow or curiosity, please channel that. Support local victim services. Donate to counseling centers. Talk to your community leaders about early intervention for abused kids. Actions matter. Thank you for riding this rough road with me tonight. This episode was called The Devil Don't Play Fair, The Murder of Colleen Slimmer. It was written and hosted by me, Tiffany Morgan, and produced by Main Street Media. The background music and theme song were by John T. Productions. Research support from Court Archives, Investigation Discovery, and WBIR.com. Now, if you'd like to sponsor an episode, we would love to partner with you. Our partners keep our show funded and running, so please reach out if you want to do a sponsorship. To further support Tennessee True Crime, you can follow us now on Facebook and Instagram. I'm so excited for that. Facebook is at Tennessee True Crime, and Instagram is TN True Crime. And you can also find case and evidence photos on those socials. Now, if you have a case that you're interested in me covering, and I have been reached out to by a couple people, I'm very excited about that, please feel free to email me at tntruecrime@mainstreetmedia.llc. Join me next week as we uncover another Tennessee case that left a lasting mark. Because here in Tennessee, We never stop telling the stories that matter. And some secrets we refuse to let stay buried. Tune in next time on Tennessee True Crime.
Smoky hollers where the cold wind sighs. Footsteps fall where the moonlight hides. Whispers over rivers, a secret lost in time. Welcome to Tennessee. True crime. Dark tales in the mountains where the mist won't lie. Echoes of the fallen under starless skies. Hear the hush of memory, the voice of the unsaid. This is Tennessee true crime, where the shadows tread.